Hello everybody, this is Sylvain Rochon and I'm excited to tell you that I've decided to do a series of articles. I'm not bored. There's all sorts of stuff going on. I just have a limited amount of time. And since I finished the manuscript of my book and now it's in editing and review and I'll be reviewing it, there's no point in talking about the second book until of course it's out and I have maybe something else interesting to say about it. And People with Purpose, that series keeps going. I'm gathering new people, so we'll get more of those video in. Now, this week, what I want to talk about is one of the first articles I'm going to do this way. Usually I write them, but I'll be doing more articles as ideas come to mind, and feel free to leave me a comment if you want me to talk about something specific. I'm always looking for topics to discuss and to write about. This topic is about talking about the planet as a chemical factory and how it's important to see it that way. And people are gonna say, well, is he going to talk about environmentalism and things like that? No. I'm a scientist. I'm a chemist. I think it's important to be rational and realistic about our current situation and how we're using the planet and its resources, especially in the light of new technologies coming and what we can do. So as you know, my expertise, I guess, that I've developed is engineering paradise. So to consciously creating things that will make something nice. Now, the nice part is, well, we want the planet to also be nice, habitable, nice weather, everything is okay, we're not in crisis. And so we have to actually see the planet Earth as a closed system. That's why I'm using the term chemical factory. It's the planet Earth is full of chemical reactions constantly, and they're constantly in balance with each other. That's what we call the equilibrium or the ecosystem. There's a balance. Things live, things die, regrow, transformation of atoms into different molecules that then decompose and made into different molecules, just like photosynthesis is in plants. To give you an example, well, it's sun coming from outside. The plants gobble that energy up and transforms that alongside with CO2 and water into sugar. And sugar is a stored, unstable, at least not that unstable, but it's fairly unstable source of energy for the plant itself, as well as the animals that eat the plant. So essentially, we're eating sunlight, if you will, when we eat something. Our source of energy when we eat something is from sugar or fats, which originally came from sunlight. It just the form of that energy was transformed from one molecule to another. So this chain of reaction is all done using the power of the sun, ultimately, which comes from outside the system, and the planet irradiates heat to this similar amount outside outside of our atmosphere to keep that balance. Otherwise, we're just accumulating heat, and we can't do that. So, well, it would just heat up and we'd die. So there has to be as much heat coming out as energy coming in the same amount of joules, if you will. But on the planet Earth, there's all these systems. There's these the non-living systems, if you will, the chemistry of the non-living, which is fairly simple in comparison with the living biochemistry. But it follows the laws of thermodynamics. It goes to the lowest energy level possible chemistry-wise. So usually smaller molecules eventually. That's why eventually rocks become sand over time. Erosion has just become smaller, less complex molecules and so on and so forth. So that's a simplified way of seeing it, but that's fairly accurate. Now, the living, however, what's really interesting about them is that the living actually takes simple matter from the non-living, from the inert, and makes complex, higher energy systems out of it. Build cells, more people we reproduce, we grow. That's all complexifying the different chemical systems. Life does that. because it's able, through the cells and different systems, it's able to take the sunlight and build up. You need energy for that, to build. You don't need energy to destroy in the natural world, I mean. So the inorganic part of the planet, it doesn't use the energy of the sun so much. Some reactions do, like water evaporates a little bit more if it's hotter and things like that. So there's physical reaction. There are some chemical reactions that use the sun, and even though there's no life there. But a lot of it, of going down into lower levels of energy, is actually exothermic. It's actually going to free up energy into the world. But anyway, I digress on that. But basically, the point is, there's all these reactions of destruction and construction with the living, being the builders, are really important. And there's a balance within all those systems that are kept, and they are not limited to political boundaries. The whole planet, this whole ball, is a whole set of chemical systems, and we need to fully understand that. Because if that means if we impact the chemistry, if you will, in a certain area, it impacts everything else, because you're creating imbalances here, and it unbalances other chemical reactions elsewhere, like in proximity, and then it kind of snowballs, or the butterfly effect, into everywhere in the world, and you're affecting the biochemistry and the chemistry, the general chemistry of everything else, as you impact one part. So moving forward, since we have that understanding, and we understand the biological world and the physical world much, much better, and we keep improving in that understanding, we have to use that biochemistry, that chemistry, to our advantage for our survival, yes, but more than that, we have to thrive. I can give you a couple examples. If we, like right now, we have technologies that allows us to take the carbon dioxide, which is very excessive, and I'll show you the graph of what the amounts look like over the last million years or so. This is a graph from NASA. It comes on the screen. And if you look at the last little parts, it's 1950s or so, when we became industrialized, a lot more CO2 went into the atmosphere. There's no reason to panic just yet about it, because it's CO2 in the atmosphere. It's way above normal because we did this. What we don't know is the exact impact of that CO2, because it's a complex set of equations that are in balance. What we do know is that among other things that we are responsible for, have participated in what we can now call climate change. It changed the climate just because we are in a single closed system of chemistry. We change something somewhere, it's going to change a whole bunch of chemistry elsewhere, and that changes the climate. The climate is temperature, humidity, wind temperature differences that create storms, different phenomena, salinity of the oceans. There's a whole bunch of factors. Not only the heat and the CO2, it's a bunch of different elements that actually change things. But it does change things over the whole planet. It's not just because you decide you're pure, very environmental in your own country that you won't get impacted by it. It's a world effort. It's a global effort. And what we want as a society, as people, is we want to feel comfortable. We don't want the bigger storms. We don't want to have problems with a vegetation that kind of recedes and goes away, because that's our oxygen generator. Now, on the other side, this extra CO2, if you use that as an example, actually helps, and also the additional heat, because the temperature is a little bit higher, like 1.8 degrees, I think, since the last 100 years in increase on average. That actually helps the vegetation grow. And we can see this, and we can show this. It doesn't grow faster everywhere, because again, it's a closed system. Just because you don't see that in your backyard doesn't mean it doesn't happen. There's no extra growth on average. Having those glaciers receding a little bit because it's a little bit warmer allows for more vegetation to grow where it couldn't grow anymore because of permafrost. and so on. Again, it's a balanced system. It all kind of falls into together, and it impacts all the other systems. Now, what we want, the danger, I guess, of and why the climate change discussion actually occurs, is because we're worried that this is kind of going to chain react into way too dangerously into the high temperatures, which will incur some bigger storms, which will affect vegetation and start killing it a lot more, even though there's higher CO2 and things like that. I mean, there's higher humidity in the air is a way stronger greenhouse effect than additional CO2. So we have to compose with that, and we have to take care of that. We have to see the world as a planetary ecosystem of chemistry. But we have knowledge of this, so we can do something about it. I think reducing some elements that are out of whack with the natural system is an easy way to balance, bring things back to where they were, even though it's a very complex system. So taking some of the CO2 out of the air is probably a good idea because it's double what it used to be. So great idea. Well, let's do some of that. And we can use technology to actually do that. That is practical for us to give us products that we need, that we want. At the same time, reverting some of that damage. Like there are some research teams, and I've mentioned this before in other blogs, that have figured out a way in a single stage to using sunlight, only sunlight, and the CO2 in the atmosphere to create carbohydrates like gasoline. But it could be used to do other things than gasoline. There's a whole family of chemicals that are based on carbohydrates, including, starch and things we actually eat. So pulling CO2 out of the atmosphere and creating starch. Why not? I'm not sure if a team actually did that, but I know about the gasoline because gasoline is a economic driver for the research. But the point is that we can be clever enough to actually leverage the imbalances that we see that are not beneficial to us, and bringing back, all the while producing something that we do want and that we need. And we can choose different materials, and we can choose how we're producing things in such a way that we are integrated into the chemistry that is natural in a way that is beneficial for the environment, which is beneficial for us, as well as providing us with the goods that provide for the demand for what we want, like what we want to build as engineers, if you will. There's a whole bunch of stuff that we can do. I'm really excited about synthetic biology, which is a great way to synergize with nature. We're actually taking some cells, bacteria, some little chemical reactors that we already know, which are cells, and re-engineering them a little bit to do things that we want, to have them do things that we want. These are not necessarily bacteria. Sometimes they actually live in cells that we reintegrate into a body. For example, that's where it gets a bit more funky and interesting. And we know that they have a natural ecosystem with their surroundings because they already are cells that are functioning and that are in harmony with what they have, the chemistry that's around them. But we make them do things, a few things that are beneficial to us. And we can probably measure, actually we know we can measure the impact locally of that. And we can, using AI and computing power, we can anticipate or project way better than any expert in the world how that small impact, that new deployment will impact everything else. We can do predictive models. Now, computing technology is getting way more powerful every year. Moore's law still applies. And we can figure that out so that whatever we do, we know we'll have an impact, or at least if we have a negative impact, that we have a plan to actually scale it back simultaneously. We have a way to actually do these things. What we're missing is the will to take those types of decisions still in a lot of parts of the world. A lot of people are acting without considering these balances, these natural balances, and the interconnectivity between the different systems. because they need to survive. They need the job so they won't harass the boss about, you know, the bad things they're doing to the environment or to the roads, the streams, whatever it is. So a lot of it is you know, people not being lazy but being stressed into taking decisions that they don't like, but they keep them the way they are because they want to survive. And that's all it does a completely economical and social structure that we are stuck in, at least for a little while, and that we should get out of. You know, there's mechanisms like basic income, distributed ledgers, and artificial intelligence. All of these things together, we can entirely remove stress over work and survival, removing poverty. We could do that really, really quick. Within the next few years, the systems can be in place almost tomorrow. And then you're removing those bad behaviors from bad actors that are acting out because they just want to survive. And you get them into thinking about better ways of doing things where there's harmony with all the chemistry around us. We want to build something that doesn't destroy things elsewhere, that keeps us alive and healthy, that doesn't destroy life or makes the air toxic. That's bad for everybody. Like a friend of mine said that, I always laugh at this concept. You know, the earth is fine. Even if we destroy ourselves off the surface of the earth will be fine. It'll always be fine. It'll always be there until the supernova of the sun happens a gazillion years from now. The problem is us. The earth doesn't care. It's just a bunch of chemical reactions, alive or not, and they're playing off each other and they're in balance. Before we started doing industrialization, it was all kind of balanced out, and it was balancing. When there were slight changes in the universe or on the planet, it would keep its balance very slightly, and things would change. Things would die. Animals would go extinct. Others would adapt through natural selection and so on and so forth. We've been disrupting things way faster than the natural cases, and we don't know for sure exactly how the world is going to be. Well, actually, let me take that back. We know that the environment is not adapting to our fast changes fast enough. And that is a problem. It's not balancing itself out. It's constantly in imbalance, in serious imbalance caused by our presence. So we do need to take care of that and be more careful, which is why it's really important to seeing the world as a whole system, not only your country, not only your backyard. It's all interconnected. If you think it's only harming your neighbor, it's not. You're harming yourself. Anyway, let's build a future that is smart. Let's take good decisions for our environment, for our neighbors, for our friends, for everybody. The planet would take care of itself. We just have to think about all this chemistry and make sure everybody's happy within it. That's all for now. Ciao, ciao.